Hello, and welcome to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm your host, Shannon Vasconcelos, and this episode is dropping on October 30th. So, for those of you watching this on YouTube, you will see that we are decked out in our Halloween finest today. If you're just listening to the audio version, you're going to have to use your imaginations about just how scary we are looking today. But we are running with a bit of a Halloween theme today. In our final segment, we're going to discuss how to not get spooked by those scary financial aid applications. In our second segment, we're going to discuss whether or not you should apply early action. But first, we're going to be talking about another scary step that at least some students will face in the college application process, pressing submit on that early decision application. So joining me for this segment is my friend, colleague, clearly a Halloween enthusiast, Karen Spencer. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, Shannon. How are you? I'm
I,
actually not a Halloween enthusiast. I don't like to dress up, but if you all could see me right now, I do have bats flying around the top of my head on my headband, which matches
we,
Shannon's beautiful glasses. So, yeah,
yes, thank you
we're
very
matchy.
much. Matchy matchy today. So Karen, I should also mention you are a former admissions officer in Georgetown and all the places.
Details, whatever.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about hitting submit on that early decision application. And you had put together sort of a list of the handful of things that students should be thinking about or doing before hitting that final submit button. So do you want to kind of walk us through the list, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and just as a heads up, I have a freshman in college right now, and which means I was doing this exactly this time last year, and I'm about to do it again next year, which I can't believe with my junior son. So I was doing this both personally and professionally, and so I have very big thoughts about submitting because it took way longer than I anticipated it would. And again, I do this for a living, so that's my word of caution to everybody: is set aside a good chunk of time, not 30 minutes, not an hour, like a few hours. I would. This weekend would be a great, actually, you're listening to this later, but if you're not, like whatever, don't wait to the last minute. Um,
Yep.
a few things I always suggest before submitting. So the first thing is to proofread. Now, and I'm going to be really old school on this, but I strongly encourage you, and I will tell you, all of my colleagues will back me up on this, of printing out your application, whether that's the Common App, the UC app, whatever it is. But the Common App, if we're talking about ED, just to look for typos. So on the Common App, on each individual page, so there are sections like the profile and education section, activity section. There's a preview button at the very top. And if you press it, you can then do print preview. And I do encourage you to print it out. Again, I know that makes it sound like 1984. Well, actually, I'm not even sure we had printers in 1984. Maybe we did. But you're going to see this. The reason I asked to do this, two reasons. One, it looks differently to an admissions officer than it looks to you filling it out. So when a student is filling it out, there's drop down menus, there's all these things. When it actually goes to an admissions office and it gets put on the screen, it's going to look different. And this is where you can see some formatting wonkiness, the fact that you put a typo, they spelled your name wrong, right? Again, as kids, when you look at something too long, like any of us, right, you could spell your own name wrong and not realize because you've just looked at it too much. So print it out and definitely have your student look it over, and have at least one parent, I would ideally look it over, just again, fresh set of eyes. So step number one, it print it off and fix any wonkiness.
Yes.
The second thing I would do is to make sure all the supplements are filled out. And I would sit next to your student while they fill out a supplement, if they haven't already done it. There are some questions on some of these that students don't know, even if you think they should. Like, God love you, my daughter, but when she was applying to state school in South Carolina, there's a lot of any state application, there's lots of residency questions that I'm sure you know, to see if you qualify. And my daughter was like, "Hey, I got a lot of questions. Like, do we own property in South Carolina?" I'm like, "Well, no, of course we don't. Why would we live in Virginia? What are you talking about?" But she had questions. I guarantee my 16-year-old son has questions about these very similar things. So they're going to have questions. What's your job title? I just had a set of friends whose kids sent their application off with the wrong college that their parents graduated from in place. So there's two Northwesterns. Who knew? But there are. And so the wrong one got put down. So have a parent sit next to you with the supplement, because again, sometimes there's funny questions. So that's one thing. And then another thing is if you are sending your test scores anywhere, is seeing who allows you to self-report them and who does not allow you to self-report them. So of my daughter's 8 schools, I want to say 6 allowed her to self-report. And then only needed official scores when she enrolled, and 2, well, one was TBD. So this is also why I don't wait till the last minute. University of Delaware, I'm looking at you. Your website was not remotely clear on whether or not you could submit self-reported scores or not. And so thus required an email from my daughter that took 2 days to respond to. So now this is 4 days from when we were trying to submit and we had to sit on the University of Delaware. So those kinds of things. And again, for those of you who don't know, it costs $12 every time you send an SAT score. I don't, ACTs must be very similar. So again, if you want to just shell that out, by all means, just send them everywhere. But I have better things to do with $100 than give it to the College Board. Nothing personal. But that kind of stuff is tedious. It takes a lot of time. And again, it took more time than I anticipated.
Totally. What about the financial
Yes, good
side
question,
of
Shannon.
things,
And
right?
so nice that Shannon has, I'm sure, opinions on this. So
I
ED,
sure do.
as you should all know, if you're applying ED, is a
Yes.
binding contract, right?
Yeah.
You have to go. You've said, yep, I get it. I'm coming. If you let me in, this is the end of it. I'm buying the swag. I'm removing all of my other applications, and I am coming to school here. If there is any doubt in your mind about whether you can afford this, we are running out of time, right? And
Yes.
so, and Shannon, I would love your feedback on this, but I think a lot of parents are like, well, we'll figure it out. I'm like, that is not a strategy.
No.
So, that price, some of these price tags are $100,000 a year. As I always like to say, that's like having a Mercedes S Series parked in your driveway for the next 4 years, 4 of them, and you can't sell them by the time when you're done. So are you ready to do that? And some people are going to be, yep. But if you're not sure, right? Any words of pearls of wisdom, Shannon, on the finance side of the house on that one?
Yes, the best tool to, because I guess sort of the backdrop here is the price of college is very untransparent. We see huge sticker prices on just about every school out there, but as a family sitting there deciding whether or not to apply early decision, you have no idea if you will be asked to pay that sticker price or if you will get a nice discount through need-based aid or potentially merit scholarships. You don't know. So the best tool that we have to figure out if a college is in your price range is a tool called a net price calculator. The
Like,
calendar
I don't
won't
think
help.
that's what it's called. I know that's not my line of work, but I don't think that's what it's called.
Net price calculator. Every school has them on their website. It's a requirement to calculate estimated need-based aid eligibility for you. The best ones, they don't all do this. The best ones also calculate merit scholarships for you. So to get a good idea, a decent idea at least, of what a college might cost you, do the net price calculator on the school's website. Please do not apply anywhere early decision and make that commitment before you know what that school will actually cost you. So do the net price calculator. Again, some of them incorporate merit scholarships, some don't. So that's the sort of a big question mark in the process. Some, particularly the large state schools, will often have like they're more
Matrix,
transparent and
yeah.
have like a chart on their website. If you get this SAT score, this GPA, you get this merit scholarship. That will also help you figure it out, but don't go into this blind. Don't apply to a school early decision if in the end you're not going to be able to afford it. It'll just cause you a whole lot of hassle and stress, heartache, financial hardship down the line. Don't do it.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, that's Shannon said it better than I could. So yeah, figure out what it's going to cost you, what it's likely to cost you. And a good rule of thumb, if this is a reach school for your student, do
Yeah,
not anticipate merit-based aid, right? You get merit-based aid where you look
100%.
exceptional in the applicant pool and you look exceptional at what a kid would probably call their safety school. It's not what we call it, but I'm going to use the lingo that everybody else listening is probably using. Easier it is for you to get into a college, the more likely you are to get merit-based aid. So use that for
Perfect.
those many schools that don't tell you ahead of time.
Awesome. And then do you have to let your teacher recommenders, school counselors know that you're applying early decisions somewhere, Karen?
Yeah, so ideally everybody would already know this, right? So school
Yeah.
counselors usually say if you have a November 1 deadline of any kind, right? Like you need to get your request, your request for a transcript in by such and such date. If you're a little concerned about a teacher not being on top of something, this is a great time to walk into their office or their classroom and be like, hey, just a friendly reminder. Here's a bag of, Halloween candy that, I'm applying ED to fill in the blank school. Just making sure you didn't need anything else from me, right? You want to seem
Yes.
helpful and also nicely reminding them that P.S. this is due in a hot minute. So hopefully you already wrote that.
And the candy bribery always works well.
Always, it's so easy. I mean,
Works
it's
on
such
me.
low-hanging fruit. It works on me too.
Now, you potentially, Karen, could be applying to a number of different schools early, not early decision. You got to pick one for that, but you could have some early action applications also in the mix. Can you like batch send all of these early applications at once?
Yeah, great question. We get that a lot. It isn't like some places where you like send one and they all go, right? So you want to
Yeah.
think about applications like they were when Shannon and I went to college, which is you had, well, maybe not Shannon, she's younger than I am,
Yeah,
but
how dare you, Karen?
I know, sorry. I still suspect it was a paper
It was.
application
It was.
with a stamp. And so you want to kind of think about them very similarly into that, right? When you, in two different ways. One is you can only send one at a time. All right. So if you're applying to 8 schools, you're going to send each one individually. All right.
Mm,
As my daughter did, right? Which means you got to sit there with your credit card and input it every single time. And right, again, this can be a tedious process. And that's why I
yes.
said I would keep a lot of time. So no, you cannot batch send applications. Now that's the good news in some regards, because it means if you make an error on one, you can't go back. Anything you haven't sent is still editable. Okay. So
Mm,
that's something else like the paper mail, right? If it's still sitting in your living room on a piece of paper, you can still use whiteout and change it, or in this case, change it on, your application online. But once it's out the door, right? Once you put that letter in the mailbox, it is
yes.
out of your hands. You cannot touch it again. And that is the same with applications. And that's why I said proofread first, right? Because once you
Yes.
send that application out the door and you've spelled your name wrong, it's a real hassle to try
Right.
to get that fixed. So check for those typos first. So no, you can't batch send, but you can edit anything that has not been sent already.
Perfect. Now we worked up the nerve. You finally hit that scary submit button. Then what happens?
So then I want students, and this is a big thing for parents too, and this is also something that took me by surprise. I shouldn't say surprise, but I was a little more surprised than I probably should have been. Most all communication is going to now go to your student. All right.
Yes.
So because the paper trail is kind of stopped at this point, right? There's not going to be a lot of paper, going back and forth. Your
Mhm.
student will get an email of some kind saying, "Thanks for applying to," and I'm say the University of Delaware again, since that's where I'm at today, apparently. Thank you for applying to the University of Delaware. You now are going to get a portal login. So most communications, this is kind of like a handoff from the common application to the schools now, right? I've given my
Yes.
application to you. That's not my problem anymore. Now it's your problem. So University of Delaware, fill in the blank any college is going to send an email to your students saying, "Hey, log in, make a login at the portal."
Mhm.
And this is where you're going to be able to track everything from here on out. Are all my materials there? Are you missing anything? And so that is a few things is check your email. Again, do not panic if it doesn't show up the very next day. This can take sometimes a process.
Yeah.
Don't panic. If you don't see it in a week, then maybe I would call, but give it a day or two. There's a zillion other ones like you trying to get processed at the same time. And you want to check it. And then the other thing is to make sure that your student is checking email at least weekly. And
Mm.
again, some students are very, they work on email a lot, and other kids, it's like I have suggested getting a carrier pigeon. Like, it's like, what do you want me? What This is not a thing I do. Um, it's going to need to be a thing you do, because colleges, like
Yes.
most adults, use email a lot. And so I have known a student who did not check her email, was missing a transcript from Penn State, got 3 reminders, didn't check her email, and then was automatically waitlisted. And she was a very well qualified, should have been in, this should have been a done deal. But because they try to reach her, that nobody's calling the parent. They're not gonna be like, "Hey, little Susan, didn't," no, they're not gonna do that. They're gonna tell your kid. So make sure your kid is at least checking email at least weekly. And deleting stuff. They're also gonna get a lot of stuff that isn't that important. Like,
Yes.
hi, buy some Blue Hen, by the way, the mascot of Delaware, Blue Hen sweatshirt, right? Now, maybe you don't want to do that. You can delete that email, but you do want to see which other ones are kind of more important than others.
Totally. And
I also
we're
encourage
running
people to like set a timer. So if you know your kid's going to forget, like every Wednesday at 8
every.
p.m., timer on your
Oh,
phone, go check your email.
so smart. I love it. We are closing in on our time for today, Karen, but any final tips that you have for students and families?
Yeah, just, my final words of wisdom. And we get a lot of calls, kind of a little panicky this time of year, like starting to question all of your life choices about all things,
Yes.
and or your college choices. Are there any colleges we have missed? Have we, and this is when I think as parents and students realize that once you press that submit button, the control is out of your control, right? Like
Yes.
there, whatever control you thought you had is now totally gone. And I get that. I understand kind of wanting to hold onto that steering wheel as tight as you can for as long as you can. But that is not what you want to do, right? Like again, proofread your work, make sure your list makes sense, and then you got to let it go. At some point, right? This is the chips are going to fall where they may. So
Mhm.
instead of getting panicky about everything, open some champagne or get a really nicely spiced pumpkin latte, as I know Shannon likes,
Yes.
from Starbucks, or do whatever to celebrate that you have gotten through at least one, if not many, of the parts of this process. And congratulate yourself. And then again, you got to let the chips fall where they may.
I love it. And probably not, I think you already said this, not wait till the last minute. I remember incidences in the past where there were tech issues, where there were weather issues, and all
Yep, the
folks
Common
lost
App
power.
crashed once. Like I want to say it was at least 10 years ago, but it did crash because it just had so much volume on it that people couldn't get
Yes.
on, and it was a hot mess. So please do not wait till the last minute.
No, no. Let yourself release the stress. It's out of your hands now. Take a deep breath, have the pumpkin spice latte.
That's
But
right.
thank you so much, Karen. This has been so
Pleasure to be on
helpful.
here as always, Shannon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And listeners, now, if you're not quite already sort of committed to a first choice school, ready to hit that submit on that ED application, but are still kind of mulling your options, deciding if you should be kicking it into gear, be ready to submit maybe some early action applications, stick around for our next segment after the break as we'll be digging into that. Welcome back, everyone. We are now joined by my colleague out west, former admissions officer, so many places, CU Boulder, Oregon State, Gonzaga, Brittany Preston. Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shannon.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you today. So, Brittany, in our first segment, I chatted with Karen a bit about folks who are kind of pretty far down the line in the application process. They've identified a first choice school, they've decided to apply through an early decision process, and they're just about ready to hit submit on their applications. But for this segment, I think we want to step back a little bit and speak to folks who are maybe not quite so far along in their process, maybe a bit more unsure of some things at this point. They're still kind of weighing some options about when and where to apply. So I think to start, maybe level setting about these different application processes that I'm mentioning, like everyone knows what they are. What are the different deadline types that students might see?
Yeah. So, step number one, when you've finalized that college list, is going school by school and confirming what are the requirements, what are the deadline types available to me. Because a lot of times that list of schools will dictate the type of deadline types available to you. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the most common deadline types out there are early action, early decision two, regular decision, rolling admission, and then there are some obscure ones like restrictive early action as well.
So, so confusing, so many
So
options.
many, yeah. And if you don't work in the world of admissions, this is like a foreign language to you. So,
Completely.
yeah,
So we're gonna, I think, focus today on early action
correct.
because those deadlines are coming up kind of any day now. So what exactly is early action?
Yeah, so a good way to think about early action is it's an earlier application date and you get a decision sooner.
Mm.
So we'll get into the benefits a little bit, but at the very basic, a lot of times early action deadlines are going to be sometime in the fall, the most common hovering around October 15th and November 1, or this year, November 3rd. We see some schools out there with that. But it's just rewarding the students who are organized and get their applications in early. And if you apply early, you're going to typically get a decision sometime around the holidays or sometime in January. So it just kind of moves up that timeline for you. And it is non-binding, which means you are not signing anything. So I know you guys just talked about early decision. You are not committing to anything. You're just getting a decision sooner. You still have until that May 1st deadline to let them know if you want to come or not.
Right. And so that's the big difference between early action and early decision, right? Early decision binding, early action not. You still have your options open, right?
Yeah, those are the biggest differences. I mean, ED, you're choosing one school and you're saying, you're my top choice. I'm coming to you. Early action, you're just saying, hey, you're really high on my list. I was organized, I got my application in, but you still have choice and you can choose between the schools, which a lot of students really like that flexibility to be able to compare
Yeah.
financial aid awards, or maybe you still want to visit those campuses. You're just getting that offer of admission a little bit earlier to help you with some of that planning.
That makes, and you can apply to multiple schools early action, right?
Yes, there's no limit to the number of schools. So when I look at a student's college list, if we see a bunch of them offer early action, I encourage them to target those early action deadlines. We'll talk a little bit about the benefits, but from my view, there's nothing to lose with early action. If you're getting it in earlier, you're just moving up your timeline and helping yourself in many, many ways.
Yeah, it feels just emotionally like it'd be great to know in December or possibly January where you've been admitted and you're not waiting till February, March, April. You can
Definitely.
just put yourself at ease a little bit more, I think. But yeah, why don't you tell us about what are some of the benefits to applying early action, Brittany?
Yeah, so obviously we talked about that timeline. You're applying in the fall, you get that decision sooner, you just get that peace of mind, you get that
Yeah.
choice. Another benefit I really like about early action is if a student is borderline and they apply early action, they may be rolled to regular decision. And so, what I like about that is think about it. You're getting reviewed multiple times. You're getting reviewed in early action, you're getting reviewed in regular decisions. So, while we don't always see as big of an impact on acceptance rates as we do with early decision, you may see a slight benefit because you're getting really closely reviewed through their entire process. Um, Another benefit is some schools have priority deadlines for scholarships, or, there might be perks. If you already have an offer of admission a little bit earlier, you might be able to apply for some of those additional things.
Yes.
Some schools for housing, it's first come, first serve. So
Mm.
if you get admitted earlier, you might be first in line to sign up for housing and you might get your top choice dorm. So there's little elements like that as well.
It sounds all good, Brittany. Is there any reason why you would not apply early action?
Yeah. You know, from my view, there's kind of two reasons students choose not to apply early action.
Yeah.
One may be a student who junior year, maybe spring semester, they just bombed all of their grades and they had a big downtrend in grades. And that student really wants their senior year grades considered in the admissions review
Mhm.
process. If you apply early, there's not necessarily a guarantee that those grades are going to be considered in your review.
Ah,
So I
yep.
have seen some students be a little strategic of, I'm going to wait to apply, work really hard this fall, prove myself so that they will consider that first round of senior year grades. But you want to be careful around that. It depends
Mm.
on the timing of when your grades are posted. If they have a regular deadline of early January and your grades aren't posted till late January, those still may not be considered. So you want to kind of think of the timing of when your grades are posted. Another reason a student may not apply early action is as we're getting closer to November 1, a lot of them are like, oh, I have a paragraph of my Common App essay
Yes.
done, or my activity list is halfway done. If the application is truly not done, they may
Yes.
decide to wait and delay. But, I've seen a lot of students who delay and then they're in the same spot in early January.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you want to really be intentional about that decision. Sometimes that deadline might just give you that push that you need to get that application done, but you want to put your
Totally.
best application forward. So,
Yes, and considering this podcast is dropping on October 30th, and we've
yep,
got some of those November 1st deadlines, if you haven't started your application yet, maybe early action is
the action's
not
not
the
for you.
best for you this time around. But
Exactly.
don't, to your point, Brittany, I think that's really smart. You don't want to find yourself in the same situation on New Year's Eve for those
Right.
January 1st deadlines. So,
Yeah,
yeah, give yourself the
absolutely.
time that you need to put your best foot forward. Really, really good advice.
Absolutely.
Now, if you do decide to apply early action, you press submit on that application, you've applied early. What are the possible outcomes that you might receive?
Yeah. So our hope is that you're admitted, and you can take advantage of some of those benefits we talked about. But there are some other decisions that come out of early action. Students are denied in early action.
Mhm.
And I often get the question of, well, if we were denied in early action, can we apply regular decision? And the answer is no. They have reviewed you for that term, and there's no more consideration of your application. Another very common decision that students may get back is deferred to regular decision. And I've
Mhm.
mentioned this a little bit, but they review you in that first round, in that early round, and maybe you're borderline, or maybe they have a really competitive year and they're not quite sure who they want to admit yet. They may move your application to regular decision. And I like to make it clear to students this is not a bad thing. They're just taking more time with your application. So it gives you the opportunity to submit an updated transcript. Sometimes they might have an additional essay, or sometimes they might have an additional letter of recommendation that they invite. Don't send extra things unless they specifically request it.
Yes.
But this again gives you that second review. And then some students may be added to a wait list. Some colleges have a wait list, so which just means you have to wait and see if other students decide not to attend. They may eventually give you an offer of admission, especially if they're a more selective school.
Very interesting. Now, that deferral decision, which I think is pretty common, if you do get deferred to that regular decision application pool, so we talked about, you'll get initial early action decisions in probably December, maybe January. If you're deferred to the regular pool, when can you expect to receive that final decision?
Yeah, so this will impact your timeline. If you're
Yeah.
deferred to regular, you're going to get that decision when all the other regular applicants get that decision. And that is typically in the winter or early spring. A lot of schools kind of release decisions in February, March time period. A
Mhm.
lot of schools don't like to release decisions too far into April because they want to give you a month to make a decision on if you're coming or not. But yeah, I will move back that decision quite a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah. Such good advice, Brittany. And we're almost out of time. Any kind of final tips if you're a parent listening to this and thinking, okay, should my student apply early action or not? What are your kind of final words of wisdom?
Always a personal decision. It relies a lot on the student and their goals and if they're ready. But if you look at your students list and they have early action and you feel like you could get it done by those early dates, I say go for it. You have nothing to lose.
Awesome. Such great insights, Brittany. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always my pleasure. So, thanks, Brittany. Listeners, we're going to take a quick break, but then make sure you stick around because when we come back, we are really going to get into the holiday spirit. That is what I got all dressed up for today. We're going to talk about how to not get spooked by those scary financial aid applications. So, stick around. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back, everyone. I am now joined by my spooktacular colleague, Laurie Peltier. Welcome, Laurie.
Hi, Shannon. Happy to be here.
So glad you're here, and we are officially getting into the Halloween spirit for this segment, and we are talking about those scary financial aid applications and maybe what families can do to make them maybe a little bit less frightening. So, to start, Laurie, I think it's important to just acknowledge, why do you think that families tend to get so spooked by financial aid applications?
Yeah, definitely. October is a scary month for a lot of
Mhm.
parents of high school seniors.
Yeah.
I think because they feel it's such a high stakes. Like if they don't get the money they need to pay for college for their child, the child might not be able to go. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like this do or die all in one, one decision.
Yeah.
The cost of college is pretty high and it keeps getting higher. So that's another stressor on the families. Some families are not all that financially savvy and they don't understand where their income and assets come into play. And so they're afraid that things will hurt them rather than
Yeah.
help them. And they're also, I think, afraid that the financial aid applications are going to impact the admission decisions and they don't want to
Yes.
restrict the child's choices because of their financial situation. The child's probably 17, 18 years old at this point, and they're starting to realize maybe I should have saved a little more, maybe I should have been a
Yes.
little more frugal along the way. So it kind of all comes to a head this month of October.
For sure. Yeah. I think there's a lot of legit fears involved, because it is so high stakes and it is so expensive. I think that I liked your last point that families are sometimes afraid about it impacting admissions decisions. But I think what we always kind of say to that, there are limited circumstances where it might. It usually doesn't. There are some circumstances where it might, but if you can't afford to attend the college without financial aid, there's no use, skipping the financial aid application because you're afraid it's going to affect admissions, getting into the school, but then you can't afford to actually send the child. So even though you might be a little scared of it, it's worth completing that financial aid application, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that families can get scared about in terms of the financial aid applications, but maybe they shouldn't really be scared about it?
I think timing is a big one.
Yeah.
October 1st is when the forms become available online, and so many people rush. Oh my gosh, I've got to get it done October 1st or
Yes.
October 2nd, no later. And
Yes.
that's not really true. Every school sets their own deadline dates. And even if you're applying early decision, some of those deadline dates are November 1st or November 15th, and that's only if you're going early decision. So
Yes.
you have time. Don't stress out about getting it done today, but rather look at your deadline dates for the schools that the student is applying to. And I
Yes.
think people are afraid of making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
What if I transpose some numbers? What if I, count something that shouldn't be counted or leave something out? You can always make corrections. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the forms have become a little more user friendly with the definitions and the explanations of what they're looking for. So it's kind of hard to make a mistake. Just take your time, read through it, read what they're asking for. Um, reach out to the financial aid office if you have a question,
Yeah.
things like that. So making a mistake is not the worst thing. You can fix it. So it's not there to stay.
Yes, and I think particularly the FAFSA in particular, it has this really kind of scary reputation, but they've made so many improvements in the FAFSA over the last few years where a lot of the information is just coming right from the IRS from your tax return. You just have to sort of give them permission to pull in the information, and
Right.
then much of it is taken care of for you. So you don't have to worry about, I put this part of income on this wrong line. They're pulling it right in from the IRS. So I think it is maybe once upon a time, the FAFSA was more difficult to fill out, took longer. I know my recent experience filling out the FAFSA, even as someone who does this and kind of knew what to expect, was like, oh, it's over. Like it was
Yeah.
that quick.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, totally. And also, like you said, any mistakes that you might make, you can fix them. And this is sort of different than we talked, I forget if it was Karen, I think it was Karen in our first segment was talking about pressing submit on early decision applications and saying once you submit that application's off to the school, you can't change anything without a hullabaloo of contacting the school. The FAFSA, you can log right back in and fix it. So there's no mistakes that are irreversible.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Now, what are maybe some things that families sometimes get wrong that they're not thinking about, that they're not worried about, that they do need to pay attention to?
hmm So I would say the first one is the FAFSA form is well known. So many families have heard of it and they know they have to do that. They're anticipating that. But what some families miss is that certain colleges will require additional financial aid applications. They may ask for the student to complete the CSS profile form, which is required by over 200 colleges now. So some people miss that, not realizing. And if you miss that, you're missing out on a big opportunity to get financial aid from that school. You can still get the federal aid from the FAFSA, but you're missing out on the institutional aid. So do your homework, check what each school requires and their deadline dates. Another one I see is there are questions about investments. How much do you have in investments? And some people don't read the fine print and they include their 401ks or IRAs or other retirement savings.
Yes.
And if you look at the fine print, it says, what investments do you have other than retirement?
Yes.
So putting your retirement there can really inflate your investments, which could hurt you.
Yes. And the same, just to point out, the same thing with your home value, because that question asks about your investments, including real estate, other than your primary residence. So
Right,
if you have a vacation home, a rental property, you have to report it, but not your primary residence. That's another mistake that sometimes folks make on the FAFSA.
Right. And I think the other part is for many families, we know it's the parent doing all of these, and the parent starts it as if they're the student. And sometimes that can really mess things up where the parent is putting parent information in the student section and student information in the parent section, or vice versa, and it doesn't go well, especially the way the FAFSA is working now. The student should start the form with the student information, pass it off to the parents. They invite the contributor or the parent to put in their information, and then it gets submitted. So making sure that you're in the right section, reporting the right person's information.
Yes, because for the record, I think you'd eventually get hung up at some point, but if you don't, if you're able to submit it with it looking like a student makes $50,000, $100,000, that's quite a well-off student. And the financial aid calculations are more harsh on the student's money than the parent's money. So you don't want parent money showing up in student places. Yeah.
Right.
Now, what if the student scares the parent and sort of adds schools to their list at the last minute after maybe the parent has submitted the FAFSA and now the student says, boo, surprise, I'm applying to another college. What happens then?
Well, that's one of the easy mistakes or changes to be made on the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA form takes up to 20 colleges, and you just list them all there and not in any particular order. And the student can go back in once it's been processed and add more schools. So we do see students saying, oh, these are my early action schools. This is where I'm going early. And then at a later date, they go, well, I'm going to apply regular to this school. And I hadn't listed it before. So you just go log back in to the FAFSA site and add the school.
Yes, very, very easy to do.
And I would just make sure that it's not so late that they missed any deadline dates.
Yes, yes, that is important. Now, Laurie, are there things that parents can do to sort of prepare for the form so that they're not quite so scary when they go to log in?
Yes. First of all, to complete the FAFSA, the student and a parent need an account with studentaid.gov. So they would want to do that beforehand. Yes. It can also be called an FSA ID. So that should be done before they actually submit the form. So they would want to get that a couple days ahead of time. And then when they sit down to fill out the form, they would want social security numbers, date of birth, the full name that's on the Social Security card, tax returns for the parent, and if the student has any, maybe a bank statement so you know what you currently have in the bank, and then the list of colleges that the student is applying to.
Yes.
Oftentimes I find that is the most time consuming. The students toggling back and forth between their Common App and their College Board account, and they're trying, where did I apply? When am I going to apply? So, so having all that data there will make it go faster, so that you don't have to get up and leave. It is the type of application that you can save and come back to.
Yes.
So if you don't have it, fine, but it is great to get it all done in one shot.
Yes, such a relief once you press submit and that form is in there.
Yeah.
Now, what things shouldn't a parent miss in this process? Or some might say ghost in this process. We might be pushing this little spooky analogy a little too far, Laurie. But what are some things that parents should make sure that they are paying attention to that they don't miss?
So the financial aid applications are for need-based aid, but a lot of colleges will also offer merit-based aid or scholarships or academic scholarships, whatever they're going to call them. So you want to make sure that you're doing your homework and looking at what are those merit aid requirements at each of the schools. Is there anything they have to do for that? Or, you know, are they going to be just considered for those merit aid offers based on their admissions application? It's rare, but some schools have specific financial aid applications separate from the FAFSA and the profile. So definitely looking at the school's website to see what they require and when, and if they have their own application they want you to fill out. And then these, the FAFSA and the profile form or the school's aid application will not tap into those outside scholarships from national or local resources. So don't miss that bucket of money. That is something that can be done at this time as well, if not already. So it's those things have their own applications, their own deadline dates, their own resources, and are not part of this financial aid process.
Right. Generally, that's FAFSA, and sometimes the profile are kind of one-stop shop where you can, it's what you use to apply for federal aid, state aid, institutional aid in most circumstances. But it's always those outside private scholarships that are the only piece of aid you have to pursue outside of this kind of main process. So checking in with your school counseling office, doing some web searches of scholarships that might be a good fit for the student are always a good sort of next step to take once those financial aid applications are in. And we should point out, I think Brittany briefly mentioned it in our last segment talking about applying early action, that some colleges do require you to apply early action or have sort of earlier admissions application deadlines. Even if they don't have a separate scholarship application, they may require you to apply by an earlier admission deadline if you want to be considered for their scholarship. So that's a big piece to keep an eye out for. So how long will families kind of have these jitters about financial aid? When will they hear something back, Laurie, about how much aid they qualify for?
And that can be tough, that waiting period. Well, you know, did it go? Where is it? It's lost in the void. It's, you know, did the school get it? It's all done electronically. And when you hit submit, the data does go to all the schools that you listed on the forms. So it is gone and it's sent to their financial aid office. It really depends on the school and their admission process. If you're doing early decision or early action, early decision, definitely you'll hear back on your need-based aid before January 1st, so that you can make a decision. You know, you'll know what your situation is. Early action, sometimes you'll hear by January 1st, sometimes you won't. It really depends on the school. Right. A lot of schools will publish their dates of when their financial aid offers are going out to limit the number of phone calls that they're getting of, you know, when is it coming? When is it coming? You'll definitely know by April 1st where you've been accepted and how much money you're being offered. So it kind of seems like one of those hurry up, get everything done in October, November, and then you have to wait till April 1st, which is a long time.
Yeah.
And even if you hear from some of your early action schools in December, you may have regular decision schools that you're not going to hear about till March. So you want to wait until all your offers are in to make a decision.
Yep. And now what I think is a really legitimately scary situation, not just Halloween spooky, but what if a family situation changes after they submit their aid applications? Like I think the most common scenario is a parent loses a job. So kind of all this Halloween goofiness aside, you're like that can be really scary situation for a parent. I've got a kid going off to college and now I've just lost my job. What can parents do in those kinds of circumstances?
So we call it a special circumstance or an appeal. You can go back to the school and say 2024 income was reported on the forms, but 2025 or 2026 looks very different for our family, and this is why. The school may ask for documentation, dates, dollar amounts, what changed, and what's going to happen going forward. But definitely, if something happens like that, you would appeal to the school's financial aid office and tell them what the situation is.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that schools, from my experience working at schools are kind of assuming, hey, a parent will appeal if it's not enough money for them. But my experience working with parents is not everyone knows that that's even an option. So I love getting the word out about that. You do not have to take a school's first offer if it is not enough for you. Go back, explain why it's not enough, and ask them for reconsideration.
Right.
And then finally, Laurie, does this spooky situation, do you just have to get through it once and then you can rest easy, or does it happen every year?
It is a year by year situation. It is something you apply for every year. When the student is a freshman and applying for financial aid for their sophomore year of college, the deadlines are a little looser and they're pushed into usually spring, like March or something like that, but it depends on the school. But yeah, if you want need-based aid every year, you do have to apply every year.
Yeah, so 4 times in your life for the one kid. If you have multiple kids, a few more times, but it gets easier, I think, each time. After that first time, you realize it's not so bad after all, and I think it becomes a little less scary. So thank you, Laurie, for helping families kind of take the spookiness level down a little bit about these financial aid applications. So thanks for sharing your wisdom today.
I'm glad I could help.
Awesome. And listeners, hope we haven't scared you off from listening to the show again. And I hope you do come back and join us next week when we're going to be discussing virtual interviews and video supplements, also college essays, and finally the QuestBridge Scholarship Program. So there's some scary stuff in there, but we're going to help you get through it. So tune in next Thursday, every Thursday when new episodes drop. Please do leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And most importantly for now, have a happy Halloween.